Hello and welcome to another episode of the Sales Circle podcast. Yes, this is your sales podcast. This is the podcast that is designed to help you improve your sales, whether you're an entrepreneur, whether you're a business owner, or perhaps maybe you are a solopreneur. If you've got to sell for a living, then this, put simply, is the podcast for you. Welcome. My name is Rob Spence, your host. I'm a sales trainer, sales author, the managing director of a multi-award winning sales and marketing agency, and I'm so thankful you could join me for another episode. Now, a bit of an apology here, if I may. As you all may know, we normally record these episodes and these come out both on Spotify, they come out on Amazon Podcasts, they come out on Apple Podcasts, and of course, YouTube. Now, unfortunately, our recording schedule here at Paragon Creative Studios has got incredibly busy over the past sort of weeks and months, and we're a bit thin on the ground today. And poor Megan, who normally edits these up, is about at breaking point. So we've moved some things around in the schedule. So although, yes, I'm so thankful you could join me here. Maybe you are watching on YouTube. Megan should be piecing together a very simple video to at least accompany the audio. But we're going to be focusing a bit on audio only today, which is great. This is what I love. I love audio only podcasts, and it's good fun. So if this is your first time with us, if this is your first time listening, then welcome. This is the Sales Circle podcast. Here we talk about all things sales skills, sales motivation. We talk about entrepreneurship. We talk about business growth. Put simply, I want to make sure that when you are listening to this podcast, and of course sometimes watching it, you come away with a whole new sense of confidence, a whole new motivation towards sales and business growth. Sometimes we talk about skills, and sometimes we talk about mindsets. Sometimes we talk about theories. Sometimes we talk about books. Sometimes we share real life stories. And sometimes we even get interviews. We bring people in. We get guests in to interview and ask them questions about sales as well. And today, we're actually going to be talking about something a little bit different. Now, as many of you may know, I am an avid reader of books. I love books. I try and read one. Well, look, I'll be honest, it's died down a little bit. I used to read one every single week, but it's kind of died down to one a month. But I'm still trying. I'm still trying to learn, because I think the more you learn, the more you earn, right? The more we can take in, the better. And recently, I read a book that's gone absolutely viral in recent weeks and months, probably years potentially, but it's only kind of come into my radar a couple of months ago. And that book is Unreasonable Hospitality by the incredible Will Guidara. And the reason I'm talking about this is, look, I'll be honest, two reasons. One, because I come from a sort of hospitality background. I used to sell fine food and ingredients to the hospitality industry. So I do feel a close affiliation to the hospitality industry. But I believe that sales occur when we deliver outrageously good service, right? Of course, there are skills, tactics, tricks that we can use to help close that sale a little bit more. But I believe that actually if we become more hospitable, if we deliver great hospitality, hell, if we deliver unreasonable hospitality, then not only can we sell better, but we can keep hold of customers a bit better. And also sometimes we can then retain customers and stop our competitors getting them as well. So we're going to be talking about that book throughout this episode. We're going to talk about the book in general. We're going to talk about some things that I've learned in that book that you can take away and literally start using from today to improve your sales. So if you are listening to this as a business owner, take some notes. If you listen to this as a sales manager, as an entrepreneur, as a salesperson, again, make sure that you are taking some notes, because there is some stuff in here that's going to really revolutionize the way that you sell and the way you deliver service. So without further ado, let's crack on with the main part of the episode. As we said in the opening segment there, we're talking about Unreasonable Hospitality today by Will Guidara. What is the book about? Well, listen, the brilliant book was written by Will, a restaurateur who transformed 11 Madison Park into the #1 restaurant in the world. And genuinely, the book, for me, the book kind of, it delivers straightforward, to the point, knowledge and information and stories and skills that we all know and we believe that should happen. But actually, we forget about it. And I was delivering a sales training at the time of recording about 2 weeks ago. And we were talking about this theory, this mindset around delivering unreasonable hospitality and delivering great service and delivering fantastic service. And this team were like, well, yeah, we get this, but, I just don't know how we can apply it, blah, blah, blah. And my argument here on is that we forget that actually whenever we sell anything, we are selling to another human being. We can put on this facade of, oh, I sell B2B, oh, I sell B2C. I can't do that. I mustn't do that. It's B2B. It's very professional. what sits behind any kind of terminology of B2B or B2C is this whole theory, this whole mindset of we are selling to another human being. At the time of recording, you and I are still human beings. We still have a heartbeat. Some of us have a soul. And better still, we are selling, we are communicating, we are conversing with another soul, another human being. So for me, that's why delivering great hospitality, it awakens those customers. And I want you to kind of think now, I want you to take a minute, whether you're driving to your next meeting, whether you're driving into work, maybe you're on the treadmill, I don't know. I want you to think about the times where you've been delivered great hospitality. I want you to think about when you've been delivered great service. And one thing that Will says, and I'll use this terminology to help you think about that example. He talks about how hospitality isn't what you do, but it's how you make people feel. It's about how you make people feel. And I think sometimes we can get so caught up in just following check boxes. Oh, we've got to do this, we've got to do this. But we forget that we're trying to make another human being feel something. If we get that other human being to feel something, then they're going to be more likely to lean into whatever it is we're selling. So why are we not helping our customers, our clients, our prospects feel something? In the book, I'll share, to be fair, I'll share some examples in due course. But what are the statistics saying? Now, Salesforce have come out to say that 80% of customers say the experience a company provides is as important as its products or services. PwC, a world-renowned auditor, accountant, go on to say that 86% of buyers are willing to pay more for a great customer experience. I will read that statistic again. 80% of buyers are willing to pay more for a great customer experience. So again, if you're not thinking about how you can deliver this great experience, how you can deliver this great hospitality, this unreasonable hospitality, then you're leaving so much on the table. Buyers, 80% of buyers are willing to pay more for that. So again, when we talk about these arguments around devaluing and discounting and price objections and everything else in between, 86% of buyers are willing to pay more if we're delivering a good service. So I want your brain to really kick into gear now. Think, hey, what was the best service that you've ever had at a restaurant, in a hotel, in a shop? And better still, what can you then do to make your customers feel something deeper and better? Sales just isn't about numbers. Yes, you sales director folk of the world. Yes, you finance directors of the world. Yes, you will come at me and say, no, my spreadsheet says we can't afford 20p per customer to buy them a gift. Blah, 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 blah. Nonsense, right? Sales isn't about numbers. It's about feelings. People don't just buy with logic. They buy with emotion. And that's what unreasonable hospitality is about. It creates powerful connections between one human to another human. And that, in my opinion, my friends, is what business is all about. And don't get me wrong, we can and we will talk about some examples around, gifts and hospitality and, entertainment and all that jazz, right? But actually, we can talk about things that are a bit smaller. We can talk about those handwritten notes. Direct mail is fantastic, whether you're trying to get on board a customer, whether you're trying to win back a customer, whether you're trying to keep a customer intact, whatever it is. I think for relationships, anything handwritten, it shows you truly care. I've got a real mission right now against AI to be used, or I guess I should say not to be used in any form of customer interaction, because I think actually when you've got any form of customer interaction, we shouldn't be using AI for that. It's lazy, right? It's absolutely lazy. And again, I'm not going to preach here, but allow me to ask you this. It's your birthday coming up. Let's say your birthday, is at the end of, when's this episode coming out? The end of July. Okay, start of July is your birthday. Your favourite uncles and aunties, they don't send you a card in the post. They just send you a text saying happy birthday. Nothing more, nothing less. Even worse than that, all they do is they go on Facebook, put on a status and say happy birthday, right? Does that make you feel wanted? Does that make you feel loved? Does that make that gesture of happy birthday seem great? Absolutely not. Again, if someone just goes on Moonpig and orders a card sent directly to you that's just already written in there, there's a bit more effort in there. But do you feel wanted? Do you feel loved? Have you built that personal connection? Absolutely not. But then again, allow me to ask you this. If that person would send you a card in the post that's handwritten, it's hand-signed, maybe a bit of money in there, it's always lovely, right? Are you going to feel a bit more connected? Are you going to feel a bit more wanted? Are you going to be a bit happier about that whole situation? Yeah, I think you would, right? Because I know I would. Handwritten notes, handwritten letters go far above and beyond anything we can ever send in an email, in a LinkedIn message, in a voice note. So again, if you do have a financial director a sales director above your head, whoever, who's really concerned about budget, right? Sending a handwritten note is not going to cost the earth. If you cannot afford the 10 minutes plus the cost of a stamp and an envelope, so an extra, pound, £1.50, to send a letter to your customers to say, hey, thank you so much for your order, your margins aren't good enough. You need to be looking at their margins straight away, right? That then helps those thoughtful follow-ups. Again, I think sometimes it's not what we say, and sometimes it's not how we say things. It's what's included within that messaging. I hate copy and pasted messaging. I hate copy and pasted, messages. I think they're a complete waste of time. And yet so many people do it. Whereas if I'm having a great conversation with someone, is it not better for me to remember who they are, what they do, what their family do, where holiday they've been on to, or, where they're going for holiday, or where they've just been, or what car they drive, whatever it is, right? Isn't it better to bring those up in conversation? Again, it shows I've listened. It shows that I've understood the needs, the wants, the desires of that individual. Right? And that comes down to, sometimes things like birthdays, their favorite coffee orders, their personal wins. Again, I was speaking to someone whilst delivering some sales training very recently, and their granddad runs a multi-site caravan sales site, multiple site. And for each customer, he's got files on each customer, and he writes in there the names of their children, the children at university, what job do they do? Have they, have they got grandkids, whatever. He just hands write them on a piece of paper so that when that person comes around again, he said, John, how's your daughter getting on at university? Weren't they studying economics or something? I don't know, I'm just making this all up, right? Again, isn't it nice when you walk into a place and they recognise you? I'm sure, again, and I'll use hospitality as a story here, if you walk into a restaurant and the owner is there greeting you, saying, hey, Sally, long time no see, how are the children, how are the family, are you well, how's things at work? Isn't that a better response to going, who are you? I've never seen or heard of you ever before in my life. That's great, isn't it? I think that it creates that personal touch. And again, that then moves on into those kind of surprise and delight moments within the sales process. What can we gift? What can we give people? And better still, how can we personalize those gifts so that it's so personal to that person? It's not just an off-the-shelf solution. It's personal to what they are. And we'll come on to some real stories in due course. So I want you to start to think about how you can develop great, deep, meaningful relationships with your prospects. How can you develop those relationships? How can you deliver that unreasonable hospitality? I want you to think about how you can deliver those services, and not even services, sorry, those experiences where you make a person feel so wanted, so needed, and so thankful that they're doing business with you as opposed to your competitor. Really take some time to think about that. Make some notes. Maybe you're driving into work. Maybe you're driving to your next sales meeting. Maybe you are at home. Maybe you're doing some DIY. Oh, God, just knock the microphone over. Get hold of some kind of paper and take some notes. What can you do across that whole part of the sales process? Think about what people have done to wow you and start to think about what you can do to wow those that do business with you. Just before we go on to some real stories and examples, I'm going to share some listener questions. This is one of my favorite parts of the podcast because I get to hear from you, the person. This is normally a one-way conversation. Normally I am filming, normally I'm videoing. Today it is just all about audio, but I love the listeners' questions because this is my chance to hear from you. And my job here is to act as a facilitator to answer your questions. If you've got any burning questions about sales, about marketing, about business growth, maybe you've got a tough customer that you're trying to deal with, maybe you need some ideas on how to deliver unreasonable hospitality, I want to hear from you. There's a number of ways you can do it. You can hunt me down on social media. Megan works really hard on getting the socials working really well. So we're on Instagram, TikTok, X, or on LinkedIn. Message me on there. Or you can email in thesalescircleofficial@gmail.com. And these questions can either be anonymous or you can name. We've got our first question here. Jamie from York says, what's a way I can show unreasonable hospitality without seeming weird or forced? Well, look, this is one of the biggest things that I get asked when I deliver sales training. They go, well, I love the thought of this, but I don't want to seem weird. I don't want to seem offish. I just think, sometimes we don't have to overthink it. We don't have to send, I don't know, a photo of someone's kids to them in the post in a lovely frame. That is weird. We can just send a nice thank you note. And as long as what we put in that thank you note is personalized, then it's all for the win, right? Again, we can personalize that approach to that individual. We don't always have to go about, going above and beyond. Remember, what we're trying to do is make people feel heard and making them feel wanted and understood. Not overwhelmed, of course, not overwhelmed, but we can do that if we're very, very clever about it. And I think at the grand scheme of things, you will always gauge with your customers as to who is willing to accept something a bit weirder and a bit more extravagant and a bit more vibrant, as opposed to the clients who are a bit more closed off and potentially wouldn't. Layla has said, how do I balance being generous with not giving too much away for free? Listen, again, you can go above and beyond, right? And what I always say in this matter is it all depends on your margins, and it depends on, it depends on, the cost of the sale. It depends on the cost of acquisition. Some degree it will cost on the lifetime of the customer as well. If someone's going to be spending $5,000 with you over 12 months, does that warrant a 50 quid budget to buy them a nice, album on vinyl? Once again, I answer yes. I absolutely answer yes. But then again, if you're selling a, £120 widget and the customer's, been really hard to get hold of, can you then go and spend 50 quid on a record? Probably not. So there has to be a value. But the thing is it all comes down to value, not necessarily cost. Again, I want you to think about those experiences you've had growing up through either Christmas or birthdays, where you have received something from a relative, right? Sometimes the most important gifts and the most memorable gifts are those thoughtful ones, those ones that leave that lasting impression, right? And think back to being a kid. I bet you can't remember every toy, every games console, every little thing that you ever had. But you remember those sentimental ones. And you remember actually potentially how happy it was to see your mum, your dad, or whoever gifting you that thing, right? So think more about value, not just the cost. Pete has said, Pete's from Derby, what if my company isn't the kind of business where hospitality makes sense? I think, Pete, we've got to think creatively here. Hospitality makes sense in every industry, in every sector. We've talked a lot in this little start of the segment. We'll share some real life stories in a moment. And we have talked a lot about gifting. Hospitality goes far beyond gifting. But if your business involves any form of human, then hospitality matters, right? Human to human selling. Again, I don't care if you're selling B2B. I don't care if you're selling B2C, right? If you're selling to a human being or a group of human beings, then you are selling human to human, right? Every prospect wants to be treated with care. We heard earlier that 86% of buyers are willing to pay more for a great customer experience. These are the buyers that we think are only looking at spreadsheets and are only caring about the bottom line and caring about cost saving, right? Everyone wants to be treated with care, with respect, and wants to be treated like we know what, like we understand that buyer to the nth degree, right? So, Pete, I'd love to hear from you again. What does your company do? I would find something to deliver great hospitality. Again, hospitality goes beyond the thing itself. Hospitality is how you make people feel. For some people, it is about taking them out for a bit of a schmooze and a wine and a dine and everything else in between, right? Sometimes it is sending a gift in the post, but sometimes it's just turning up at the offices saying, hey, look, really thankful for your order. I know it's not much, but I've got you a bouquet of flowers and some chocolates or although then again, it sounds like you're taking them out for a date, right? You can send, whatever. Sometimes it could just be, going above and beyond that person. Hospitality is about how you make people feel, not the thing itself. But thanks so much for those questions. It's great to hear from you. Again, if you've got any questions or maybe you'd like to become a guest on the Sales Circle, do email into thesalescircleofficial@gmail.com, or of course by all means message me on social media. You'll find me just about anywhere. So remember, hospitality isn't just about giving gifts. It's about making people feel noticed, about making them feel wanted. And I'm going to share with you some personal stories of mine and some other stories that have been sent in. Someone said that they'd noticed that their client mentioned that they were upset that they were missing their hometown football club. Once the sale had been completed and the customer was there, the salesperson mailed them a signed match day program. Now, for me, that's hospitality. Again, that is beautiful. It's a perfect example. You are listening to the prospect. You are understanding what the prospect wants and needs. You are sending a surprise gift, something they wouldn't expect. Again, even, sometimes a signed match day program, I guess, could be a bit expensive, but even just a match day program, it's going to cost you less than 10 quid to buy the program and send out if it's unsigned, right? How lovely is that to come through? And I don't think that, encourages any bribery policies that some of these big companies have, right? It shows again that we're listening. It shows that we care, right? So why can't we do that kind of thing? Another story, a software sales rep onboarded a client and sent cupcakes to the team to celebrate the go live. No sales, just clients. And I love that. It goes to show that some of these acts don't close the deals. They seal the relationship. And that for me is absolutely, absolutely vital. I think back to some of the experiences that I've had. And again, we were doing business, or, we signed up to an agreement with a company a few years ago. And that company sent me a hamper at Christmas time. And to be fair, it was that hamper that they did actually sign the deal that got me across. They were a payroll company, and they got in touch, couple of initial conversations, nothing really went ahead. They sent me a Christmas hamper, obviously at Christmas. And I'll be honest, the hamper must have cost them, I don't know, 50, 60 quid. There was some really good stuff in there, really nice stuff, maybe a bit more. There was nothing that came with a hamper. There wasn't a sales rep with the hamper saying, hey, look, we're ready to sign the deal, but only if you can have this hamper if you sign that deal. It was just, here's a hamper. It just arrived randomly in the post. And again, that made me feel wanted. It made me feel like they wanted to do business with me. It made me feel like they really wanted to work with me. That then changed the whole relationship from a transactional, you give me money, we deliver this, to, hey, Rob, we really want to do work with you. I've shared this story before, I think, on the podcast, and apologies if I have. Sometimes I stay away in hotels for work, for business, and for pleasure. And I was at a hotel down in London. And now, actually, I think the London hospitality trade, especially with independents and some of the smaller chains, is far beyond anything you'll get anywhere else. Went into a hotel. First time I've ever stayed with this hotel. I'll tell you who they are. The Montague Arms by Red Carnation. Beautiful hotel. Beautiful set of hotels, the Red Carnation group. And we got in, checked in early, because you're in London, right? You want to see the site. So look, we arrived, literally 5 hours before check-in. Said, look, I know we're early, but we're here. Can we just check the bags in and we'll come back later? So yeah, not a problem at all. Listen, before you go, we've got some free hot chocolate over there in the lounge if you want to go enjoy it. And my gosh, did we? They had this hot chocolate machine. No one was manning it. Loads of marshmallows, loads of chocolate, loads of hot chocolate. We were able to sit in this lovely lounge by the fire. We were able to enjoy the Christmas tree that had been put up. And then the beauty of it all was we could then go unwind, relax, go out and enjoy London. Later on, we got a phone call literally about an hour and a half before we were due to check in. So, Mr. Spence, just to make you aware, your room is ready. There's no rush to come back. However, we wanted to make you aware in case you wanted to get refreshed for the afternoon and the evening. What a great little touch that is. So many hotels, they go, no. You are not, until 3 o'clock, you are not checking in. You are not allowed into this building until 3 o'clock. An hour and a half early, they gave me the call, say, hey, look, can we use the facilities? Lo and behold, we get into the room. We're in there for potentially 20 minutes, half an hour, give or take. Knock on the door. Go and open the door. Lovely person there with a trolley. They say, hey, we've just baked these in the oven. Some nice warm shortbreads. Would you like some? We've got some nice shortbread delivered. Warm, still warm from the oven. Delivered straight to the door. And there were so many other little touches in this restaurant that still to this day make me always want to stay with the Red Carnation group. Now, these are things that, of course, cost the restaurant and the hotel money. Of course, it's not going to be cheap to provide hot chocolate, but also to potentially lose sales on hot chocolate. But this company have looked at the bigger picture here. They've gone, hold on, yeah, we can lose, £2 to £4 per person, I guess, on hot chocolate. But actually, if that person stays and spends £200 a night, £300 a night, is it worth that investment? And they've gone, yes. And lo and behold, we've booked in another 2 times. We've stayed at that very hotel again since. And we've booked in at one of their sister hotels around the corner in Mayfair, I think it was. I think it's called the Mayfair. I could be wrong. But they've thought about the bigger picture. So, again, delivering hospitality isn't always about these expensive gifts. I've sent all sorts. I've sent bottles of gin. I've sent records on vinyl. I've sent... I've taken people to dinner, to lunch, to brunch, to coffee, everything else, right? It doesn't always have to be this big, grand gesture. I want you to think about actually how you make people feel. It's the how you make people feel that's going to get people not only buying from you, but are going to likely recommend you to other people, and again, potentially then buy from you again and become a great referral partner, building that great relationship. So what can you do? Before we move on to our book recommendation of the week, what can you do to help you become more unreasonable in delivering hospitality? Well, for me, first of all, listen deeply. Every prospect will pretty much tell you their likes, their wants, their desires, the things that they do in their spare time, but only if you ask. Don't be afraid to ask. Don't be afraid to get personal. Again, stop with the whole I sell B2B nonsense. We must speak about business non-stop, right? You're selling human to human. You are selling to a soul. You are selling to another being, right? Who wants to feel the way in which that you want to feel, right? Treat others like you'd want yourself to be treated. So ask people questions, converse, listen for those clues, make notes of those cues and those clues, and then act on them. You can soon find out who a person's favorite band is. You can learn who a favorite, person's sports club are. You can find out who, what they do at the weekend, how many children they've got, what they do in their spare time. But only if you look, you listen, and you use your eyes and your ears. Celebrate those milestones. Of course, I think sometimes just sending something surprisingly is great. Even in my opinion, even during that sales process, again, if you truly, trying to sign a contract that could be worth, 2,000, 5,000, 10,000, 20,000, whatever it is, right? Can you afford to send that person a little £10 gift, like a little box of chocolates? Again, I think you can. Of course, there's a chance you're going to lose the sale, but could you lose the chance to make that person feel great? Absolutely not. And just a word of warning, I'm not an optimist here. Like, I know that sending someone some chocolates doesn't guarantee a sale every single time, right? But again, it helps. But then again, it doesn't have to be along that. If you've signed a deal, if you're, the first meeting, whatever it is, that milestone is, make it great, celebrate it. And finally, don't forget to just surprise generosity. Go a bit above and beyond. Don't just send the generic bunch of cupcakes. Don't just send the generic thank you letter. Think differently as to what you can do to help people, again, feel wanted, feel needed, and, feel absolutely overwhelmed with your generosity. Just before we go on to this week's book recommendation of the week, I've got to give a little plug. I've got to give a little pitch here, haven't I? If you want to take on board any form of sales training, I'd love to hear from you. We've got online sales training, in-person sales training, and everything you and your team need to become better salespeople. Get in touch, go over to Paragon Sales Solutions, and I'll get in touch with you there. So I'm sure you can guess what our book recommendation of the week is, right? It goes without saying. Our book recommendation of the week is Unreasonable Hospitality by Will Guidara. Of course it is. I'd be wrong not to. And as always, we will drop a link in the show notes and in the description below so that you can get a hold of your very own copy. Now, again, listen, the book isn't a sales book, right? It will not teach you closing techniques. It will not teach you ways in which you can overcome objections. It will not share with you stories of, the greatest salespeople in the world and what they did to do this and that, right? The book isn't about that in the slightest. But Will Guidara took on board, through a career in hospitality, took on this fantastic restaurant, and I always forget the name of it. Always forget the name. Let me just grab my show notes. I always forget. What an idiot. 11 Madison Park. And throughout the years, Will and his team grew this restaurant to become, voted the #1 restaurant in the entirety of the world, which I'm sure you can agree is no mean feat. And they did it step by step. They did it step by stage. And what Will did is through learnings and through delivering great service, his team then went on to create job roles called the Dream Weavers. And these Dream Weavers were, paid, and the jobs were to create unforgettable experiences, and not just unforgettable experiences, but personalized experiences. So some of the examples Will shares is one of my favorite stories. Will was, walking the restaurant floor and heard how a group of 4 people, they were talking about how they had this once in a lifetime opportunity to visit New York. That's why they were there. And that was their final night. And he heard them saying how they'd had a great week and how they'd really loved the experience. He also heard how their regret was not eating a hot dog, not eating a street food hot dog, right? And how upset they were for that. And Will went out onto the street. He ordered this hot dog, bought this hot dog, took it to the chef, who apparently, as the story goes, wasn't too happy, but plated this hot dog up in a nice way, took it out to the guys. No charge for this. He said, "Hey, I heard that you wanted a hot dog. This is on us." Like, how nice is that, right? Once again, what's the cost of a street hot dog? I genuinely, I don't know. Less than $5, I would argue, right? A bit of wheels time, right? But that made that service so much better for that person enjoying that meal. They also found that as a group, as a team, they had that age-old challenge that a lot of restaurants have. They need to turn over tables quickly because they need to get more bums on seats. The more covers you get, the more money you make, right? But at the same time, they don't want to rush people out. And so if you look at the experience of eating in restaurants, one of the most awkward experiences is when you're asking for the bill. Everyone wants to ask for the bill. Some people want to mill around. Some people just want to get out, right? So what they devised was this, what they used to do was just take over at the end of a course, at the end of the last course, they'd take over a bottle of brandy, glasses for everyone on the table, say, hey, look, this is all on us. It's complimentary. Enjoy and stay as long as you wish. Here is the bill, as and when you are ready. Again, that provided that hospitality of, well, hold on, these guys are giving me free drinks. I might stay for one. Some people didn't even touch it. Some people who just wanted the bill would once again pay and bugger off, right? They were thinking about, things that could make people's just lives and service so much better. And better still, they made things so personal, so tailored to the experience of that restaurant user, to that customer. So make sure you grab a hold of your copy. It's gone viral at the minute, and rightly so. There is a link in the show notes below for you to go out there and pick up your own copy, and I'd love to know what you think about it. And that about wraps us up for another episode of the Sales Circle podcast. Just before we do say goodbye, I hope you've been able to pick up something from this episode that's going to enlighten you and help your team. Again, I'm not expecting to go out there and spend, thousands of pounds on gifts and everything else in between. But if you can make someone feel better, if you can make someone feel great, if you can make them feel wanted, heard, needed, you're more likely not only to make a relationship, but potentially a sale. Remember, what was that statistic we shared earlier from PwC? Was it 84% of buyers? It could have been 86. 86% of buyers are willing to pay more for a great customer experience. So please, and if you are struggling with sales directors and finance directors who don't understand this, send this clip to them alone, right? Sometimes you've got to invest to think of the bigger picture. I get it. I fully get it, right? If you are selling a low value item that's potentially only with one transaction, giving someone a gift can be a bit costly. But let's think about the bigger picture here. Sometimes we are selling things that are worth tens of thousands, sometimes, tens of hundreds, sometimes just, tens of pounds, right? Is it worth just giving a bit of a welcome, a bit of a thank you note, a bit of a way to make that person feel wanted, needed, right? And beyond that, what's the longevity of that customer? They're going to refer people. They're going to recommend to you. Are you going to build a fan or just a customer? So sometimes you got to go a bit deeper. And again, my final word of warning before we do wrap up. Remember, hospitality isn't just about buying people gifts or taking people to corporate events or, taking people to dinner or anything else like that, right? Sometimes hospitality, in fact, actually all the time, hospitality is about how you make people feel. So if you are listening to this on the way into work, or if you are, listening to this, on the way to a meeting, whatever it is, think, what can you do to make your customers feel wanted, needed, or heard? And actually, sometimes the answer lies there within what you have experienced elsewhere. And that about wraps us up for another episode of the Sales Circle podcast. Thank you so much for joining me. Make sure you do hit the subscribe button. Make sure you hit the follow button. The more of you that follow, the better this content will be. Normal service should resume next week and a full video should be made available. But thank you so much for tuning into the Sales Circle podcast. I've been Rob Spence. And until next time, all the best.